I remember the smell of the operating room that morning. It was the distinct metallic scent of cautery and the rhythmic pressurized hiss of the ventilator. It was a Tuesday, and on my table was a 67-year-old man named Thomas. As a cardiac surgeon, I've opened thousands of chests, but Thomas was a case that stayed with me. When I reached in to feel his ascending aorta, the primary vessel that carries life-sustaining blood from the heart to the rest of the body, it didn't feel like the firm, pressurized rubber it should have. It felt like a concrete pipe. It was cold, rigid, and completely unforgiving to the touch. This wasn't a man who had neglected his health. Thomas was a retired teacher who walked 3 miles a day. He was on 4 different high-dose blood pressure medications, and he followed every single rule his doctors gave him. And yet there he was under my lights because his biology was failing faster than his pharmacy could keep up. As I stood over him, I realized that Thomas was a victim of what we call silent stiffening. He was fighting the pressure with pills, but he wasn't fighting the underlying structural decay of his vessels. What I'm going to share with you today is exactly what I told Thomas's family in the waiting room after that surgery. The real battle for your longevity isn't won in the pill bottle. It's won in the microscopic chemistry of your kitchen. We are going to break down 5 surgical-grade dietary resets that do not just mask the numbers on your blood pressure cuff, but actually address the inflammatory rigidity of your blood vessels. Stay with me because by the end of this deep dive, you won't just have a list of foods. You will have a forensic understanding of how to make your arteries act 20 years younger, starting with your very next meal. But before we get to the specific tools, we have to address the why. Why does blood pressure become such a monster after the age of 60? To understand this, you have to understand the anatomy of a blood vessel. Your arteries are not just hollow tubes, they are living, breathing organs. They have 3 distinct layers, and the middle layer, which we call the media, is packed with elastic fibers. When you're 20, your vessels are high-quality rubber hoses. When the heart pumps, the hose expands to absorb the pressure. When the heart rests, the hose snaps back. This is called vascular compliance. But as we age, a process the medical community calls inflamed aging begins. Chronic low-grade inflammation acts like a slow-burning blowtorch on those rubber hoses, melting the elastic fibers and replacing them with stiff, scarred collagen and calcium deposits. Think about what happens when you leave a rubber band out in the sun for years. It becomes brittle, it cracks, it loses its stretch. That is exactly what was happening inside Thomas's chest. Pumping blood through a lead pipe takes significantly more force than pumping through a rubber one. This is why medications often stop working or require higher and higher doses. They try to lower the volume of the water or slow the pump, but they don't fix the pipe itself. Today, we are going to focus on the biology of the pipe. We are going to talk about how specific molecules found in common foods can act as biological WD-40 for your arteries, restoring that lost elasticity. Now, the very first thing I want you to change, and you can do this as soon as your next meal, is something I call the fiber first rule. In the world of cardiovascular surgery, we often talk about hemodynamics, the way blood flows through the body, but we rarely talk about how your digestion actually dictates your hemodynamics. I want you to begin eating your vegetables first, completely finishing them before you touch the protein, the rice, the potatoes, or the bread. This must be done at every single meal, and the reason for it is purely mechanical. The science behind this was reinforced by 2025 clinical reviews focusing on postprandial vascular stress. When you consume fiber, specifically the insoluble and viscous fibers found in leafy greens and cruciferous vegetables at the very start of a meal, it creates a physical mesh across the lining of your small intestine. Think of it like a biological filter that sits over your absorption sites. The reason a surgeon cares about a net in your stomach is because of the post-meal glucose spike. When you eat carbohydrates first, like that piece of bread or a scoop of rice, your blood sugar levels skyrocket within minutes. Your pancreas responds with a massive flood of insulin. We now know that acute insulin surges don't just affect your weight, they cause an immediate, involuntary contraction of the smooth muscles in your artery walls. Your vessels literally clench in response to that insulin. By eating your vegetables first, that fiber mesh slows down the absorption of sugars into the bloodstream. This prevents the sugar spike, which in turn prevents the insulin flood. Your arteries stay in a relaxed, dilated state throughout the digestive process. In a landmark 2024 study, participants who simply changed their food order without changing what they ate saw a significant reduction in arterial stiffness markers within just 8 weeks. This isn't a diet, it's a mechanical override of your body's endocrine response. To implement this correctly, you should start your meal with a significant bowl of greens. It could be spinach, kale, or a simple green salad. It is important that you do not add croutons or sugary dressings yet, because those will bypass the fiber shield. Just focus on the fiber. Make it a non-negotiable rule in your household. If the vegetables aren't finished, the rest of the meal doesn't start. This one habit alone can reduce the mechanical stress on your heart by up to 15% after every meal. It is the easiest way to protect your endothelium from the daily micro-trauma of modern eating. But beyond just the order of your food, there are specific vegetables that act as your body's natural calcium channel blockers. As a specialist, I'm often asked what the best superfood is for the heart. And I always tell people to look past the exotic marketing and look at celery and arugula. Most people dismiss celery as crunchy water, but from a forensic medical perspective, it's a powerhouse. It contains a unique phytochemical called 3N-butylphthalide, or 3NB for short. Research confirmed in late 2025 shows that 3NB specifically targets the smooth muscle tissue within the media layer of the artery walls. It signals those muscles to relax. This is the exact mechanism of many pharmaceutical blood pressure medications which work by blocking calcium channels to prevent muscle contraction. 3NB offers a gentle, natural parallel to this process, helping to reduce the peripheral resistance that keeps your systolic pressure high. But I want you to pair that celery with arugula for a synergistic effect. While the health world has been obsessed with beetroot for its nitrates, arugula is the hidden king. It actually contains one of the highest nitrate-to-weight ratios in the plant kingdom, often exceeding 2,500 milliliters per kilogram. When you chew arugula, the bacteria on your tongue convert those nitrates into nitrites. Once swallowed, these become nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is the master signaling molecule for your entire cardiovascular system. It is the gas that tells your arteries to open up and allow blood to flow freely. Without enough nitric oxide, your arteries stay clamped shut regardless of how many medications you take. I tell my patients to prepare what I call a vascular primer salad. 2 cups of fresh arugula and 2 stalks of sliced celery consumed 10 minutes before their main course. You are essentially preloading your system with a natural vasodilator, preparing your pipes for the increase in blood flow that happens during digestion. This is a targeted clinical approach to salad. You aren't just eating for nutrition, you are eating for vascular compliance. I have seen patients who struggled with resistant hypertension finally see their numbers move after incorporating this specific primer into their daily routine. It is a powerful tool for anyone over 60 whose arteries have started to lose their natural nitric oxide production. That brings me to a third tool that almost everyone has in their kitchen, but almost everyone is using incorrectly. I'm talking about garlic. If you are using garlic for your heart health but throwing it straight from the knife into a hot pan, you are effectively destroying the medicine. This is one of the most common mistakes I see. Garlic contains 2 components kept in separate cellular compartments, a compound called aleon and an enzyme called aleonase. The actual heart medicine, the molecule called allicin, does not exist until those 2 components mingle. In the wild, this is the garlic plant's defense mechanism. When a pest bites the garlic, the cells break, the enzyme meets the compound, and allicin is formed to ward off the attacker. For us, allicin is a pharmacological powerhouse. It has been shown to inhibit the activity of angiotensin II, a hormone that causes your blood vessels to constrict and your kidneys to retain water. However, the enzyme alliinase is extremely heat sensitive. If you chop garlic and immediately drop it into a hot sauté pan, the heat kills the enzyme first. To get the 8.3 millimeter drop in systolic pressure seen in 2025 meta-analyses, you must follow what I call the surgical 10-minute rule. You should crush your garlic cloves thoroughly to break as many cell walls as possible. Mince it fine, then leave it on the cutting board for at least 10 minutes before it touches any heat. This allows the chemical reaction to reach its peak concentration, and more importantly, it allows the allicin to become heat stable so it can survive the cooking process. This simple habit turns a flavor enhancer into a genuine medical intervention. I've seen patients' labs improve simply by changing how they prepare their evening meals. It sounds too simple, but in biochemistry, the order of operations is everything. By letting your garlic breathe, you are essentially compounding your own medicine. It is a zero-cost, high-reward strategy that directly targets the angiotensin system. If you are already taking an ACE inhibitor, this protocol works in harmony with your medication to provide an extra layer of vascular protection. Just 10 minutes of waiting can change the entire chemical profile of your dinner. But the work doesn't stop when you finish your dinner. We have to talk about what happens to you at night. This is a topic that is often ignored in standard doctor visits, but as a surgeon, it's a primary concern of mine. One of the most dangerous cardiovascular patterns we see is nocturnal hypertension. Normally, your blood pressure should follow a circadian rhythm. It should dip by 10 to 20% while you sleep. This dip is critical because it gives your heart muscle a chance to recover and prevents the delicate capillaries in your brain from being hammered by high pressure for 24 hours straight. However, for many adults over 60, this dip never happens. Their pressure stays high all night. This is why the risk of stroke and heart attack is highest in the early morning hours. Your heart has been running a marathon while you were trying to sleep. To address this, we look at the 2025 updates from the WAJA trials. The intervention is incredibly specific. 30 grams of walnuts, which is exactly 14 halves eaten 30 minutes before you go to bed. You might wonder why walnuts specifically. Why not almonds or peanuts? Walnuts are biologically unique among the nut family. They are the only common nut with a significant concentration of alpha-linolenic acid, or ALA, which is a plant-based omega-3 that directly reduces vascular inflammation. But for the nightly dip, the secret lies in their natural levels of melatonin and l'arginine. This combination acts as a chemical stand-down order for your sympathetic nervous system. It facilitates the natural nighttime pressure drop and improves the elasticity of the aorta. I had a patient named Sarah, 72, who struggled with these morning spikes. Her morning blood pressure was always 150/95 despite her medications. We started her on the 14 walnut protocol. Within just 3 weeks, her morning readings stabilized at 128/82. We didn't change her medication. We just gave her body the biochemical signal it needed to rest. Write that number down. 14 halves 30 minutes before bed. It is a simple evening ritual that can save your life. It ensures that when you wake up, your heart isn't already exhausted from a night of fighting high resistance. This is about working with your body's natural clock rather than against it. This leads us to perhaps the most controversial yet most important part of this entire discussion. If you walk into your kitchen right now and find bottles of vegetable oils, specifically canola, soybean, corn, sunflower, or grapeseed oil, you need to understand oxidative stability. For 30 years, the medical establishment told us these oils were heart healthy because they were polyunsaturated and low in saturated fat. However, the 2025 consensus in lipid science has shifted dramatically. While these oils are not poisonous in their raw form, they are structurally unstable. They are packed with omega-6 linoleic acid, which has double bonds that break down easily when exposed to heat, light, and oxygen. When you cook with these refined oils, they undergo a process called oxidation. They break down into secondary metabolites called aldehydes. When you consume these oxidized fats, they enter your bloodstream and act like microscopic shards of glass to the endothelial lining, the single cell layer that lines your arteries. This triggers the very inflammation that leads to the concrete pipe syndrome Thomas had. It is a slow burn damage that happens meal after meal, year after year. I want you to move to a dual fat system. For all cold use, light sautéing and drizzling, use extra virgin olive oil. It is packed with polyphenols like ulecanthal, which 2026 research has shown can reduce C-reactive protein, a marker of systemic inflammation, by up to 26%. It is a living oil that actively fights inflammation. However, for high heat cooking, where you need stability, I want you to use real grass-fed butter or ghee. I know for decades you were told butter was the villain. But as a surgeon who has seen the physical damage of chronic inflammation inside the human body, I can tell you the truth. The chemical stability of your cooking fat is far more important for your blood pressure than the old debunked myths about saturated fat. Saturated fats like butter are structurally full. They don't have the weak double bonds that oxidize and turn into vascular irritants at high temperatures. Check your labels tonight. If a product says vegetable oil or soybean oil, it is driving the inflammatory fire in your arteries. Switch to extra virgin olive oil for your salads and grass-fed butter for your pans. This is a fundamental shift in how we protect the lining of our vessels. Your endothelium is the Teflon of your body. If you keep it smooth and uninflamed, your blood pressure will naturally find its balance. This one change can make a measurable difference in your inflammatory markers within just 90 days. It is about choosing fats that support your biology rather than fats that degrade it. Now let's take a step back and look at the surgical map we've created together today. We started with the fiber first rule to stop insulin from clenching your arteries. We added the celery and arugula primer to flood your system with 3NB and nitric oxide. We fixed your garlic preparation to ensure you're actually getting the allicin medicine. We implemented the walnut protocol to protect you during the dangerous nighttime hours. And we performed an oil audit to stop the daily microdamage from oxidized fats. Every single one of these 5 steps works on the same fundamental goal: restoring vascular compliance. I want to be very clear. I am a surgeon, not a magician. If you are on medication, you must stay on it. These 5 resets are designed to work alongside your doctor's plan. They provide the infrastructure that allows your medication to work better. Never adjust your dosage without a direct conversation with your primary care physician. We are giving the heart the support it deserves, but we are doing it as a team with your medical providers. We are moving your arteries away from being concrete pipes and back toward being flexible hoses. I've spent 30 years opening chests and seeing what happens when these systems fail. I have seen the tragedy of too late, but I have also seen the miracle of the human body's resilience. Even at 70, 80, or 90 years old, your blood vessels are capable of repair if you stop the daily assault of inflammation and start providing the right building blocks. This information isn't just theory for me, it is what I see in my clinic every day. When a patient takes control of their kitchen, their prognosis changes. They go from being a victim of aging to a manager of longevity. That is the power of understanding the forensic chemistry of your food.